Hey, it's Ryan Conrad here, and today I'm going to talk about a topic that's been requested plenty of times, and I'm going to talk about auto insurance. Many of you, most of you, probably purchase auto insurance, will purchase auto insurance, or have purchased auto insurance. I'm sure that some of you have no idea what all the coverages do, really haven't asked enough questions, so this video is for you. And my only disclaimer before we get into each coverage is just to be aware that I live in California. I am a licensed insurance agent in the state of California, and I don't know that these coverages and specifics will be exactly 100% true for where you live, so please be sure and research that information before you make any decision. So let's get right into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the line item coverages that you will likely find on your policy, and then I'm going to give you a quick example of how they affect you and what to look out for. The first coverage is bodily injury. This is basically where you injure someone else. Maybe they can't go to work, and so you might have to pay for not only their injury, but maybe some of their income for a period of time. So within California, the state minimum requirement for this is $15,000 per person with a $30,000 maximum. This limit was set up many years ago and probably should have been updated to something much higher to adjust for inflation, but it has not. So with this coverage, what you're going to want to do is make sure that you have a suitable amount that you feel comfortable and that protects your assets, income, and equity in your home and those sorts of things. So an example of this is basically pretty simple, right? You rear end somebody, you're distracted, and you hit another car, and you severely injured the driver of that vehicle. So if you've got 100,000, 300,000 limits, what that means is that you're going to have 100,000 to protect that person, and if there happen to be anybody else in the car, then you'll have a maximum of 300,000 for basically 3 or more people. That would be the amount that your policy would cover you. And when you're choosing these, you do want to take into effect the higher that your income is, and the more assets that you obtain, those kinds of things. You definitely want to increase your policy as life goes on and as you become more financially astute. You got more stuff. The next coverage is property damage. This is going to be both another vehicle, a building, a fire hydrant, anything that you run into with your car. This property damage coverage is going to, hopefully cover those items. The state minimum here is $5,000 for property damage. Basically, what that means is that if you only purchase $5,000 and you go and hit a car that's worth more than $5,000, you run the risk of them coming after you personally for the difference. So if you hit a $30,000 car and you have $5,000 in coverage, if you've got the income and assets to take care of that, you might be on the line for $25,000. So it's definitely something that I recommend increasing and making sure that you have a suitable amount to make sure that you can cover the damages that you might cause, because hitting a car into another car or something like that could definitely be very bad. The next coverage that I'm going to talk about is uninsured motorist bodily injury. This is very important. Typically, these limits will match that you choose to protect other people, their bodily injury. And same thing goes. The very minimum here is $15,000 and $30,000, and you can purchase more than that as well. And I'll give you an example of what uninsured motorist might do for you. Let's say that you are on vacation and you are hit by someone else, and they only have that state minimum of $15,000, and you are severely injured, and you can't work. Let's say you make you make good money and you can't work, and you've purchased $100,000 in coverage. What you could potentially go after your policy for is the gap between their poor policy and your uninsured motorist limit. So basically, just kind of work that backwards. It'd be if you were really severely injured, you could get $85,000 from your uninsured motorist and $15,000 from their policy, giving you a grand total of the $100,000, which is the limit on your policy. And basically, that's underinsured motorist. And if they didn't have insurance, it would look the same, except for you could go after the full 100,000 on your policy if those were the limits that you chose to have on your policy. Uninsured motorist, when used, is a very powerful coverage and very important to have. And I hope that kind of clarifies what it could be used for. That's one example. The next two coverages are also uninsured motorist related. One is uninsured motorist property damage. This would be for somebody who has decided to not have comprehensive and collision coverage. And if somebody hits your vehicle and it's only worth, let's say it's worth, $2,000 to $3,500 range, this would give you coverage if somebody with no insurance hits your car and you know who did it and find out they were uninsured. So all those check boxes need to be checked before any coverage could be paid out. So basically it can't be a hit and run for that particular coverage, but if you know who did it and they don't have insurance, you could have some coverage there. The next coverage is uninsured motorist property damage waiver or collision waiver. Basically what that is meant to do is if you have a collision deductible and somebody hits you and doesn't have insurance, this little addition to your policy will allow you to waive your collision deductible. Some of you out there have a very high deductible, maybe you have $1,000 deductible to save premium, and that waiving of the deductible will be pretty nice for you if you found out that an uninsured motorist hits you. So that's what that's for. The next coverage is medical coverage. Medical coverage can come in, 1, 2, 3, up to maybe 25,000 is probably the most that I've seen. 5,000 is fairly common for the people that elect to have it. This could help out with chiropractic care in an accident. It could help out with a high deductible medical plan. It could help your passenger if you were ever, you took someone to lunch and someone was severely injured during that drive. Medical coverage can be a great thing. I think if you see any chiropractor, they'd be pretty excited and definitely a pro for that coverage on there, because that tends to be what I see most is chiropractic care when you get into an accident, medical payments. The next coverage is comprehensive coverage. So comprehensive coverage is for things like theft, flood, vandalism, and a moving animal or moving debris, anything that's not stationary in the road but it's sliding across the road, is going to fall under comprehensive. Obviously the example of those, I kind of gave you most of those examples, so I'm not sure that we need one for that. But yeah, if your car catches fire, if it's parked in the garage, sometimes people will think homeowners insurance will cover that, and that's not the case. So, you might want to have that for theft and all those kinds of things. So, very important. The next coverage is collision coverage. Most of the time I think of collision coverage as when you are at fault. But this could also be a hit and run. It could also be that you got hit by someone else and you just don't want to go through their insurance. So you can elect to go through your own carrier, and in some cases you'll have to pay your deductible. And that will vary per state and per company. Sometimes they'll waive it, but it kind of depends on the situation and the company, personally. So the collision deductible, I typically like to have a little larger deductible. I prefer to keep, if you're a pretty safe driver, I think $1,000 deductible is pretty safe. $500 used to be very common. I think that $1,000 is becoming more common, just to kind of keep the cost of your insurance in check. And another way to look at this that I think is important is that, let's say today your policy, you're listening to this video and you're thinking, man, I don't have a lot of coverage. I don't have a lot of bodily injury coverage. I don't have a lot of uninsured motorist coverage. What I would recommend is increase those areas of your policy and then take this time to offset the cost of those additional coverages with the deductible change from $500 to $1,000, so that you can have much better coverage where it really matters and have a little bit more of an inconvenience of a higher deductible. And the reasoning and the thought process behind that is so that you could come up with another $500, but if we talked about one of those examples where somebody sued you for $40,000 and you only had $15,000, that's going to create a lot worse of a day for you. and it's just not a good idea to be underinsured on bodily injury limits. So definitely consider having a higher deductible. I think that's a smart idea. Other than that, there are other fluff coverages that I won't go into too much detail because they are going to vary from company to company. And that is things like towing and roadside service. You've got rental car. Some companies will offer a special glass buyback so that if you have a high comprehensive deductible, they might have some sort of special deductible for cracked windshields, chip repairs, and those kinds of things. But that's very company specific, so I don't feel like we need to go into those. But just remember that when you're purchasing insurance, there's no full coverage. There's comprehensive, there's collision, and there's a lot of other line items. And before we finish this video, I do want to talk about one coverage that I'm thinking of at the moment that I think is important to know about. And it's called OEM Coverage. What this means is if this is a newer car that you care a lot about and you do not want aftermarket parts installed on your vehicle, whether it be a body panel or a windshield, if you own a Lexus out there and you really prefer that you have a Lexus windshield if your windshield comes cracked, you may want to ask your insurance company if they offer this special coverage. Basically, if you're ever involved in an accident or have a glass repair, the insurance company is not required to put OEM, manufactured parts. That basically means original equipment. They're not required to. They're just required to put like new products on your car. So if you have a car, a Honda, Toyota, maybe that's not too important to you. But if you have a Lexus or a Mercedes, it might be something worth investigating because it's a lot easier to do it now than to be upset later when you're going through a claim and you're surprised by the parts that they're trying to put on your vehicle. Other than that, I think that sums up the auto insurance pretty well. I will be producing some videos on home insurance, renter's insurance, and I'll be talking about umbrella insurance as well in soon videos. I appreciate everyone for watching this YouTube video today. If you're not already a follower on my Instagram channel, please head over and do that. It's Conrad_Inspire. I'll put the link below. And don't forget to like this video if it helped you, and have an awesome day.